So what if I told you that the entire story of our universe, I'm talking its fiery birth, its billions of years of life, and even its ultimate end, was all laid out in a Sanskrit hymn written 3,000 years ago? It sounds, well, kind of crazy, right? But the parallels between this ancient text and modern cosmology are honestly, they're just too stunning to ignore. So let's dive in and explore this cosmic heartbeat.
I know what you're thinking. It sounds pretty much impossible. How could ancient sages, with absolutely none of our modern tech, possibly figure out the entire life cycle of the cosmos? Well, the clues, as it turns out, might be hiding in plain sight. They're encoded in a series of names from an ancient text. You might have heard of it, the Vishnu Sahasranama.
Okay, now this is where things get really interesting. Just take a look at these connections. You've got these ancient Sanskrit names on one side, and when you translate them, well, they seem to map directly onto some of the biggest, most mind-bending concepts in modern cosmology. We're talking universal seed for the singularity, the expander for the expansion of space, and the shrinker for the big crunch. It's an almost perfect match. So let's break this down piece by piece, starting right at the very beginning.
All right, let's rewind the clock, all the way back to the very first moment, the birth of our universe. And you'll see, the way it's described feels surprisingly, well, modern.
So, you know how modern science talks about the singularity, right? That unbelievably hot, infinitely dense little point that existed right before the Big Bang? Well, this ancient hymn has a name for that. Vishvaretah, and its translation, the seed of the universe. The text literally describes it as the single seed from which the entire cosmic tree sprouted. I mean, that's not just poetic. It's an incredibly precise match for how we see it today.
But what made that seed pop? What kicked everything off? Modern physics points to something called a quantum fluctuation, basically a random flicker of energy in the void. Now get this. Consider the name Swayambhu. It means self-manifested. The idea is that the universe just appeared. It came into being from its own inner potential, with no outside push needed. Again, you have the ancient idea and the modern theory lining up in this really uncanny way.
So from that tiny spark, the universe just bloomed. And that brings us to the phase we're in right now, a story of constant, relentless expansion.
Now, to really get how radical this ancient idea was, you have to remember our own recent scientific history. I mean, for centuries, right up until Edwin Hubble in the 1920s, Western science was absolutely convinced the universe was static, fixed, unchanging. But the Vedic view? It seems like they always saw the cosmos as this dynamic, living, breathing thing that was constantly expanding.
And of course, they had a name for it, Vistara. It translates literally to the expander. It's the perfect word to describe the idea that space itself is stretching, growing, which is exactly what scientists today call the metric expansion of space. It's wild.
And it wasn't just about space either. They also seemed to get time. They called it Samvatsara and saw it as a fundamental dimension of reality. This hints that they understood this unified fabric of space-time, the very stage where this whole cosmic drama is unfolding.
But you know the saying, what goes up must come down. And these ancient texts suggest that this huge expansion isn't going to last forever. Eventually, the universe is meant to take a breath and begin its slow, inevitable collapse.
Modern cosmology actually has a theory for this, a possible end to everything we know. It's called the Big Crunch. Basically, it's the idea that gravity will eventually win the cosmic tug-of-war, pulling everything, all the galaxies, stars, and planets, back together into one super dense point, kind of like where it all began.
Okay, and this next part is, well, it's chillingly specific. There is a name, Tvastaa, and its definition is, he who makes all beings shrunken at the time of cosmic dissolution. I mean, seriously, can you think of a more direct or more poetic description of the Big Crunch? The parallel is just, it's one-to-one. And the vision goes even deeper than that. The texts say that as the universe collapses, it's not just that matter gets squeezed together, it actually breaks down. It regresses from what they call a gross or complex state back to a subtle, more fundamental one. So they describe the universe going from sthula, that's the gross physical state we see around us, back to sukshma, a subtle state. And the name for this subtle state? Sukshma. It literally means the subtle. This lines up perfectly with modern high-energy physics. Our science predicts that in the extreme energy of a cosmic collapse, all matter would just get ripped apart into its most basic building blocks, things like quarks and gluons.
Okay, so all of this leads us to the biggest question of all. It's not just about what these ancient sages knew. It's how. I mean, how on earth could they have possibly known any of this?
Yeah, that's the real mystery here, isn't it? With no Hubble telescope, no particle accelerators, how is any of this knowledge even possible? Well, the ancient sources say their whole method of figuring things out was just radically different from ours.
So, think about it like this. Modern science uses external tools, right? Telescopes, particle accelerators, to look outward. But the rishis, these ancient sages, they used the only instrument they had, consciousness itself, to look inward. They had this process called Srishti, which is like a direct cognitive perception, something they achieved in deep meditation. And through it, they believed they could tap right into the fundamental laws of the universe.
There's a quote from one of our sources that just nails this difference. It says that the vision of science is always turned to the outside, and even when it tries to look inward, it just kind of floats back to the surface. The idea is that the Rishi's method wasn't about observing the universe from the outside, but understanding it by exploring the very consciousness that was doing the observing.
And this leads to their ultimate vision, that the universe isn't just a one-and-done story with a start and a finish. No, it's a cycle. You have Srishti, which is creation, then Sthiti, that's the period of sustenance and expansion we're in right now, and finally, Samhara, the dissolution. It's not a straight line, it's a perpetual cosmic rhythm, this endless pulsation of existence.
And to help wrap our minds around this enormous, immense cycle, the texts give us one last, really beautiful analogy. They call it the Great Cosmic Breath.
So just try to picture this. The entire lifespan of our universe, from the very beginning to the very end, is nothing more than a single breath taken by some vast cosmic being. The breath out, that's the Big Bang. A huge exhalation of light, matter, and energy, all expanding outward. The long, slow pause where the breath is held, well, that's the life of the universe, the phase we're in now. And the inhalation, that's the big crunch. All of that form and energy is just drawn back into the source, waiting quietly for the next cycle, the next breath, to begin.
So at the end of all this, we're left with a really profound question. Are all these incredibly precise parallels just a remarkable coincidence? Just a fluke of poetry and language? Or are we actually looking at the echoes of a completely different kind of science? A forgotten science based not on instruments, but on consciousness itself? I'll let you decide. The answer, for now, seems to be encoded in that cosmic heartbeat.